Good morning. Yes, it's still morning. Just to give, I stand on protocol that's already been observed, firstly, but just to give a bit of a background, I know he shared what we will be speaking to, but I just want to bring it home using a case study that we're very much aware of, so that even as we have the discussions, you will see why it is really critical to actually have the conversation that we're having today. When you look at what happened in the 1960s, we had the mine in Pique coming through. But over the years, once it started shutting down in terms of operations, the community in itself, it suffered. What it has shown us is the conversation that we're having today at the time was not being had. When you look at SDG goal number 17, when it talks about partnership, it talks about public-private partnerships, mobilizing of resources and policies that need to be put in place. This morning, I believe I have the right people on stage. We do not want to have a talk shop. Yes, the leaders are here, but we want to actually talk about policy. We want to talk about plans that will be put in place so that 3 years from now, we can definitely, those that are in the room, can speak to the very fact that the things that we were discussing today have been implemented. We have a representative, Kesego from Lucara. We have Lesego representing the banking industry and the voice of the people. I'll call you that for this morning, Victor. I think he's really critical also for the conversation this morning because he's heard from the communities themselves as a person who works in media. So he's heard both sides. Often you hear that corporates, both from a mining sector, also even in the finance industry, that we like to do a lot of PR. The communities often complain. So I feel that he is right to be on the stage because he will be speaking as the voice of the people. And we're also joined by our Honorable Minister here this morning, and he will be speaking on the different plans that the government has, especially since they are new. I believe that the plans that they have will be implemented in the coming years, if not starting this year, in relation to what the government will do specifically for the communities in partnership with the mines. Now, to start off with my questions, I want to set the stage in terms of the discussions that we're going to be having this morning and start with you, Victor. We're having a conversation earlier, and I know you're very bold and confrontational in terms of what you've seen and the ideas that you have. And I believe as you share, it will really give a point of reflection for the other panelists in terms of their responses to the questions that I actually have. The first question that I have for you this morning is, how should communities benefit, in your view, from mining activities beyond the traditional CSR that we've seen? We saw that perhaps what happened with Pique, the CSR that was being done at the time, perhaps it was the giving of blankets, the traditional giving of books to schools, etc. But that did not create a sustainable community. What, in your view, could be done and could have been done at the time?
Thank you very much, Chilisa, and good morning to the room. Well, I think there are 3-4 ways that communities would have benefited from mining activities. First, as we know, Kioneer jobs and skills transfer. That, I would say, as a country, we had done significantly well. The question mark could be put about perhaps the local communities where these mines are. But at a national level, we had done very well. But we could put a question mark at local communities, for example, in Letakane or in Jwaneng or in Toteng, in terms of the people who are coming from the communities, in terms of numbers, how many locals have been hired in those operations. Secondly, is the one that Rachel spoke about earlier on, free education. We have done very well. We used the diamond revenue to actually provide free education as a nation. But there's a question mark also in terms of the quality of the education. A as we know now, our economy is not doing very well. And as we also know, we are at a point where we actually oftenly speak about wealth transfer to Botswana and the citizens. And if you look at the failures, they largely come from the education system that we have had over the years in terms of teaching our people how to create wealth, for example. We have our education system spending money in other subjects, but we have not had a chance here, or a large majority of the people who go through public education system, for example, they should be going through or learning financial literacy, which is where you actually learn how to create wealth, whether as an employee or as someone who's into entrepreneurship. So the free education that Rachel spoke about earlier on is applauded, but we need to put a tweak to it to now say, if going forward we want to model or we want to have active participation in these communities, how then do we ensure that the people in Kumu or in Madukola, they know, for example, basics like a dividend, what is a dividend, what is a shareholder, what is inflation? Because if you walk on the streets and do a survey, to start with, they don't even know the diamond to start with. So how then do we expect them to participate or to actively participate in the value chain, the diamond? So the education would have to tweak it there. Secondly, we as communities supposed to, or thirdly, they're supposed to benefit through procurement. You were speaking, Kushatha, about the mine in Ketlhalefile, which was opened, I think, around 1973, if I'm not mistaken. And to date, as we speak, most mines that are in the country, they still get their procurement largely from outside, including PPE. Look, we had at some point government actually coming up with incentives for tax in Ketlhalefile, as an example, where multinationals or foreign nationals, foreign enterprises came and set up in Ketlhalefile textile factories there. They end up relocating to Lesotho, some of them. But if you look at it, if the community in Ketlhalefile was capacitated enough in terms of financial literacy, in terms of business management, they would have been the one possibly owning those factories to supply other mining ventures that we saw coming in the country. So we would now look at the mines in Khanzi, in Toteng, in Letakane, getting their PPE from Ketlhalefile as a community-owned venture there. We could not be speaking at a point where now even the boots, the safety boots, we take them from South Africa or elsewhere.
Thank you, Victor. I like the fact that you pointed out that that Botswana is doing some work. One I noted yesterday, Ketlhalefile, the GM for Joining, spoke to where their dream, where they want to see Joining post diamonds. He spoke about the Diamonds to Mutton project, the tourism that they actually want to bring into the Joining area. And I know some of the CEEP team are probably here. I know they've been doing work around the PPE that you're speaking to. I think perhaps one of the things that we can do better, I know you said there are still question marks, that we can do better is perhaps sharing more information around the opportunities. But your points are noted, and it brings me to perhaps my engagement with the Honorable Minister. He spoke to the need to empower the community. We applaud the work that has been done previously, but Vic has shared with us that there is still more that can be done to be more impactful. Kindly share with us the plans perhaps that you have specifically for the communities in the mining areas.
Let me give a context to my submission this morning by saying one of the deeply insightful thinkers, Noam Chomsky, said the world is facing a confluence of triple crisis of unemployment, poverty, and inequalities. This is the very situation we are confronted with as the government, and in particular, the Ministry of Local Governments, for we are responsible for social protection and social development in this country. You might have noted that in terms of the recurrent budget, we are ranked number 3. This is indicative of the centrality of the Ministry of Local Government in the developmental agenda of this country. Let me also put a further context to say this new government, the Second Republic, is hinged on a democratic developmental states to say, in terms of developmental states, there must be a balance of economic growth and social development to say there must be involvement of the very same people we seek to develop. That is why, as the Minister of Local Government, we are trying to sustain ourselves as an agile, high-performance ministry. That is why, among others, we are engaged in decentralization policy to try and have deconcentration and devolution of power from central government to local authorities, because local authorities, by virtue of their proximity to the people, they are in a better position to offer quality services to the people and drive local economic development. One of our model going forward will be focused on local economic development or local led development and rural industrialization, because we believe we cannot focus on community building at central level at the exclusion of our people there. And further to that, we are reviewing Local Government Act, Bohosi Act, among others, to try and give potence and prominence to the role of traditional leaders, other local governance structures like trust, cooperatives, transformation of VDCs into village development boards. We are transforming other programs like the former Impelere into public works programs so that they focus on basic infrastructure and maintenance, and that will take into consideration partnerships with other players in terms of an attempt and an endeavor to benefit from mining activities. And then lastly, there is a cabinet committee on sustainable economic growth and social justice, which is chaired by the Minister of Local Government, and it has, among others, the membership of the Minister of Minerals, Tourism, Entrepreneurship, Lands and Agriculture. The concern from the cabinet in terms of this committee is that mining has contributed profoundly to the economic growth of this country, but the communities that are adjacent to these areas where we have these mining activities remain marginalized, and they remain with challenges in terms of access to social services. They have environmental degradation and so forth. So the committee is anchored on coming up with policy framework to advise the government in terms of the formulation, the implementation of policies that will ensure that there is equitable distribution of economic benefits derived from mining activities and so forth. So in a nutshell, as the Ministry of Local Government, on behalf of government, we are changing the local governance structures to empower community leadership, to put them in a situation whereby they can be able to engage in partnerships. For example, that is why councils, in terms of the decentralization policy, they are to register investment vehicles so that they can engage in triple P model, so that they can, in terms of benefit and royalties from mining activities, they can be able to generate and manage some economic activities at that level. So the idea there is to have some form of, from mining activities in terms of beneficiation, to have beneficiation projects so that there is also beneficiation in terms of employment, promotion of local content development, skills transfer, and so forth, because it's about the people. We want the economy to benefit the people. Tourism activities, mining activities, we want them to benefit the people rather than a situation where we have a rich country and then the people in those communities are poor. Thank you.
I think we can applaud better for that because he's talking of transformation. I like how you said it's about the people. I know that's something that probably ignited a fire in Victor because he's really passionate about the people in the communities. And that brings me to you, Kes. Can you kindly share with us what Lucara is doing in the communities? Also, if possible, touching a little on what you're doing around social development. The Honorable Ministers talked about social development and local economic development. If you do have projects in that space, kindly just share with us in your response to the question.
Thank you very much, Kushatha. Good morning, everyone. The Director of Ceremony asked a strong and timely question earlier this morning, and I think it's high time we start addressing that question, of which I believe this panel will be addressing that. As Lucara, Botswana, we believe that mining can be a powerful catalyst for inclusive development if it's rooted in shared value and community partnership. From the beginning, our approach has been to go beyond the traditional corporate social responsibility, but to invest in commercially viable and community-owned projects. Our corporate social responsibility framework is guided by the 10 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals that we have adopted from the 17. And the 17 being partnership for goals, something that we are calling for to drive shared value. One of the flagship projects that we have done for the communities is the Mokubilo Horticulture and Egg Production Farm in Mokubilo Village. This project was done to address critical challenges that were prevalent in that village. Issues of unemployment, issues of local economic empowerment, issues of malnutrition, which was prevalent in that village. There's another project that we have done in Kwe Village in Boteti East, which is a small stock and fodder production farm, also aimed to address these critical issues, being food insecurity, generating income, and empowering the local communities. There is another project in Madikola Village. As much as it was intended to also bring income and also support local employment, the other critical aspect that has been missed is that people of Madikola Village, the community had to access hardware services in villages like Letlhakane. And this was making building very expensive for the community. And this hardware was bringing the hardware material to their doorsteps. Another project to talk to is another horticulture farm in Kolongwaneng. Kolongwaneng is in Kalahari South, also geared towards food insecurity, diversifying the local economic program, and also creating jobs for the local community. Just recently, we just completed a construction of a sports complex in Letlhakane, geared towards sports promotion and development, and also generating income for the district. Currently, we are constructing a primary school in Makhaba Village. The nearest school from Makhaba is Mokubilo Village, and children had to walk almost 12 kilometers to the nearest school in Mokubilo and walk back. And the only option that they had was to board from Standard 1. And the schools and the village was experiencing high dropout rates. Hence, we saw it as an opportune project to ensure that we bring the school closer to Makhaba. as many projects that we are doing and that we'll continue doing for communities in Botswana to ensure that they are sustainable. Projects to support food security, projects to bring in local employment, which the minister was talking to, projects to give access to clean water and sanitation, something that we are robustly doing, projects to ensure that there is diversity, and also partner, which is the key element here. How do we partner with communities to drive value or shared value? And one can ask Kushatha, I know we're running out of time, how do we as mining houses ensure sustainability, ensure longevity of these projects such that they are able to survive beyond the life of the mining operations? That's a critical question that we should all address to ensure that we actively listen to our communities. Our projects should align with the vision of the community. You can imagine where you set up a project that doesn't align with a village like Mokubilo. What will happen after the life of the mine? Because what we want to see, we want to see the projects continue to operate beyond the life of the mine. We want to see the project sustain or be sustainable beyond the life of the mine. And most importantly, we want to see the projects grow. And how do we also empower and capacitate local communities to be able to do that? As a number of things that we can do as mining houses to promote that, to ensure that we invest money in local enterprise development. We invest money in skills training. We invest money in creating market access. I think this was one topical issue that was addressed from yesterday. How do we give and create access to markets for communities? We can even do some joint ventures with communities such that we collaborate in projects that will be able to give them access to also participate in the mining value chain. Thank you.
Thank you, Kesego. I liked her response to the question because she's captured that Lucara is about the people. The minister had already shared with us that it's really about the people, and the work that you can see from what she said that Lucara does, that they've put the people at the heart of everything. I like the fact that also you've brought solutions. You are giving the representatives of the mines here possible solutions in terms of what they can also do. Which brings me to our last panelist, my colleague Lesego. Often banks are seen as just financiers. You bring in the money, you ask for you bring in the money for a deposit, or you come to the bank for funding. We never really hear what banks are doing beyond that. But last year, Stanbic did something that was a first for the market. Can you share how Stanbic partnered with Botswana to impact the communities that the mines are at, specifically the Dronning area and the Poteti area?
Absolutely, and thanks for that question, Kush. And good morning to the audience and to my fellow panelists. I think a lot's been said, and I think often as financiers we're criticized, perhaps fairly in some instances, in terms of creating access to funding. More often than not, when we see entrepreneurs approaching us as financiers, the list is quite onerous in terms of what we require for us to extend funding. And I think at Stanbic Bank, we realized that this model was not going to work in its traditional format. It was important that we were able to collaborate with the likes of Botswana and say to Botswana, we would like to understand what are the pain points for the communities surrounding and in where you operate. And I think, one of the first things that came out was simply access to funding. We as the mine have done a lot. We've created access to market, and I think you've spoken about some of the amazing work that Lucara has done in terms of providing access to market. But at the end of the day, as a mining house, you can't be expected to create market, provide funding, all of these things. I think it's about creating a collaborative environment where we all can play. So we were able to sign some MOUs. We signed an MOU with Botswana under their CEEP program. We were able to sign an MOU with the Chamber of Mines. And further to that, we were also able to sign an MOU with Ketlhalefile that enabled for us to put and pledge grant funding that went to grassroots or the smaller entrepreneurs, the startups, where we were able to say, at Stanbic Bank, we are going to apportion a portion of our funding and go directly towards these entities that traditionally wouldn't qualify for banking services. And the reason behind that was quite simple. All the large entities that we see in operation today, at some stage, started from somewhere. Whether it was a family member providing finance, whether it was borrowing from a close friend or family or another business or whatever the case might be, they all started somewhere. And for us, it was important to say, let that somewhere be Stanbic Bank. And I think beyond that, we realized that there was a significant gap because it's one thing to have an amazing business idea. It's another thing to actually bring it to life. There's undeniably certain skills that one needs to run a business. And so we decided that we would go beyond this. We were going to provide training over and above this and collaborate with the mining houses to say, what is it that these entrepreneurs need beyond the funding to make these businesses sustainable, as has been said, such that these businesses exist beyond the life of this mine. And Vic, I think you spoke about it when you said, if it's a PPE manufacturer, how do we, beyond the life of perhaps the mine that's in that geography or vicinity, how do they keep that business going so that they're supplying PPE to another mine in another part of this country or beyond the borders of this country? That's the sustainability that we were looking to unlock. So I think through those training programs, we have seen tremendous success, and we've been able to participate across the value chain, whether it's in the agro-processing, the food manufacturing side of things. There have been tremendous opportunities that we've seen across the divide, and I'm really encouraged when we visit some of these entrepreneurs. Many of them are women, many of them come from disadvantaged communities, but simply giving them an opportunity, a chance to break through in the world of entrepreneurship, often supported by the minds that we have, by creating an enabling environment. I really think that it's really been impactful. And I mean, I really think the call to action for the financial community is, there's room for everybody. And oftentimes, as financiers, we compete. But there's equally times when we come together to collaborate. And I think initiatives like this is certainly an area of collaboration. How do we all come together so that we can empower, uplift these communities so that they can deliver and create sustainable, employment, jobs, and businesses beyond the life of the mine?
Thank you. Thank you for that. Victor, I was hoping that you'd smile because you talked to capacitation. Some of your question marks were around financial literacy. I know Kesego spoke to access to markets, which you kind of touched on as a question mark in terms of what needs to be done. I know we're out of time, and thank you for the call to action, Lesego. Indeed, there's room for all of us. There's a need for alignment and collaboration, which speaks to what you spoke about in terms of the SDG goals, number 17 being partnership. And you can see partnership across the mines, across the finance industry, even with government. But with that, I think I'm just going to, before our director of ceremonies comes in and boots me off the stage, I'm just going to ask our honorable minister to share some closing remarks. I hope you've heard the wonderful work that Lucara is doing for the communities. We've heard from Rachel from Botswana. We've also heard from the financiers. You've heard from Lesego, specifically from Stanbic. You've also heard the concerns from Victor as the voice of the people. Perhaps share with us your closing remarks, your thoughts, and perhaps a commitment. We had challenged the team for Projects Magazines to say, may this not be another talk shop. May we be able to come back a few years from now to see results obviously somebody has to be accountable. And I believe all the representatives here from the finance sector and also from the mining sector are also going to be held accountable to what we've discussed today. But please share from your view and from government itself.
Okay, thank you very much. At international level, as the government, we remain committed to Agenda 2030, that is the global framework on sustainable developmental goals, in particular, goal number 8 on inclusive growth. We also remain committed to 2063 AU agenda in terms of the Africa we want generation of economic opportunities for people in Africa. And for the business, we want to say, as the government, we remain committed also to create an environment that will enable business to thrive and prosper. And then lastly, in terms of our commitment in the social contract with the people, this thing of beneficiation is born out of the fact that we find it unethical, immoral, that we can have areas where there are some rich activities like in mining and tourism, and then at the same time, the people are marginalized economically. That is why it is important for these people to be included in the proceed of the economy. From the Ministry of Local Government, we are saying Baatweng, people first. That is why we will continue to engage the private sector, will continue to engage non-state actors, will continue to engage community groups so that collectively and together we can be able to drive local economies and so forth. So this then will require utmost collaboration, cooperation between all partners. We'll engage in social dialogue structures and so forth. I always say there will be a time when all of us will not be in our positions. The question will be, what legacies are we leaving in terms of the responsibilities that have been bestowed upon us? Thank you very much. As the government, we are available to continue to engage.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being attentive during our panel discussion, and I hope for the representatives of the mines when it comes to impact in the communities. You have heard from the leaders. I believe we've learned a lot from Lucara, even from the finance industry, and also from the representative of the communities themselves.
Lovely stuff, Kushatha. Let's give them a huge round of applause.